Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, this is going to be a Cosmere exclusive video where we just kind of talk about some general Cosmere stuff. Today we're going to talk about the fact that Brandon has said that the Cosmere is not an entire universe. It is only a galaxy or a cluster of stars that is smaller than even a dwarf galaxy. So yeah, we're going to talk about how disappointing that concept is for me, and we're going to kind of rant and rave about it a little bit. So yeah, with that being said, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, unless this is only on Patreon. And yeah, let's begin. So, apparently, the Cosmere is a dwarf galaxy or a cluster of stars that is smaller than a dwarf galaxy. So, instead of the Cosmere being an entire universe, much like our understanding of the universe being infinite in size, then like the Cosmere is not that. So, see, this idea is very disappointing to me because it has multiple like butterfly effect type implications, and a lot of the words of Brandon that I was able to find where Brandon's talking about this, he doesn't give good enough explanation for it. So it's more or less a speculative idea that he kind of brings out there, but he is very certain that it is like a dwarf galaxy or a cluster of stars. It is not in the scale of an entire universe. But then a number of people ask follow up questions, basically saying, so is Adenausium only responsible for that cluster of stars? Like, is Adenausium basically only the god of this small, tiny cluster piece of a giant universe? Like, is investiture a universal constant, or does it only exist in this galaxy? Like, are these shards actually all powerful? Like, when we talk about their power levels, like you're talking about combining infinities, can they be infinities of power if they're limited to one galaxy? How does any of that work? And in a meta contextual reason, why would you want to do this? Like, what point is there if you're not going to populate the rest of that universe in any way? Because he made mention that the characters might or might not ever find out about this. It may or may not ever be relevant to them at all. So if it's never relevant, nobody ever figures it out, then what's the point to limit the scope and scale of the universe? That just literally limits our scope of imagination for no good reason. So if there's something that happens toward the end, like Adenausium is reconstituted, and then Adenausium be like, yeah, well, I'm just the god of this galaxy or whatever, and there's like actually 16 other gods of other galaxies, and then like there's actually 16 more levels on top of that, that like, you know, it could be like Russian nesting dolls of god level power that goes all the way up before it reaches a universe scale level power. That, in my opinion, would be overly complicated for no good reason, and I just wouldn't care for it. So one of the issues that I really do have with it is the scope and scale of the grandeur of the Cosmere. Because if Adenausium is just the god of a cluster of stars or of a dwarf galaxy, then that nerfs their power significantly. They're not on a universal scale, so they don't deserve the term god, in my opinion. They shouldn't be called a god. So therefore, the lesser gods, the shards, they definitely shouldn't be called gods or considered gods at all, because they're just powerful aliens. Like, it's not. It goes back to like how I feel about like the Potter Mage. So in the Potter Mage series, there are people that they call gods, but there are some people that they speculate are not actually gods. They're just very high level magic users of the magic that they know exists in their universe. So I'm kind of leaning towards that, which, I mean, it's a distinction without a difference, to be honest, but to me, like having the specificity of the size of the Cosmere being so small, it dwarfs the entire majesty of the entire concept to me, because you can say yes, all the action of the Cosmere, all the active planets, all the shard worlds where the new shards are, you know, running off and stuff, they all just kind of ran to this one like galaxy or this area of a galaxy, even though they have like a non-intervention kind of pact and stuff. So it begs question, why would they even hang out all in the same galaxy if they wanted to be separate, except for the ones that stayed together? So the ones that wanted to be completely separate, why wouldn't they go to the opposite end of the universe? Like, there's just so many different kind of questions that, like, in the world building magic system type of direction, that it just sends my brain like just cascading into infinity, like to the point where it's mostly a frustrated kind of infinity that I live in, because it's like, why nerf it when you have a literal entire universe to play with? And then also, why make such a big deal about Rumetus and Skyward and Alcatraz and Reckoners and stuff all being in different universes because you don't want a universe with Earth to, the Cosmere doesn't have an Earth equivalent. So, I mean, I guess Yolan would be the Earth equivalent, but like there's no Earth in the Cosmere. So those stories, those series all takes place in a different universe. But what's the point of that if there is a way in which you can be? I mean, I guess Skyward makes sense because, say, Skyward, detritus or whatever, and the superiority is just in another galaxy on the other end of the universe. Logically, if Spence ever found out about the Cosmere, she could just hyper jump all the way to the Cosmere and probably muck up a lot of stuff. So, still in that logic, I understand that for those reasons. Reckoners, though, similar, not really similar. I mean, actually, kind of similar, because if anybody that's in the Greater War of the Surges found out about the Earth with the Reckoners' abilities, they probably try to go and take over that planet and recruit all those epics in order to fight for them the way they want the Surge Binders to fight for them. But if they're it begs a bunch of other questions. If their power in like the shard power is limited to that dwarf galaxy, then would they be able to even travel to another galaxy? Would that even work in any way, shape, or form? Like, how does that work? Like, I don't understand it. Instead of making unless there's an implication that the Cosmere universe is an entire universe, but that universe itself is only the size of a galaxy or a dwarf galaxy or something, making the entire thing functionally a pocket dimension. I could get behind that a lot better because that's kind of interesting. It's like it reminds me of the little universe Franklin Richard created in the comic books in Fantastic Four. So like if it's something like that, that could be really cool. I really like that. But this idea of it being a dwarf galaxy in a functionally similar universe to ours is just, the scale of it, ironically, even though the scale in terms of Earth scale is still ridiculous, it's like the scale in terms of a cosmic scale is dwarfed, and it just disappoints me majorly. Like, there's just so many, like I said, rabbit hole and cascading type of implications that this has that like hits major issues for me. Like one of the biggest issues that it causes is the concept of the spiritual realm. So like, if the spiritual realm is not a universal constant, then how does any of the cosmology work? Like, that implies something similar to like this quantum theory idea of the multiverse, wherein that there's different pockets of the universe that have their own sets of laws of physics, and because the ever expanding nature of the universe, these different pools of energy or whatever, these different zones with their own rules of physics or whatever will never meet another one. So functionally, it exists as its own separate universe in another universe, even though it's still technically in the same plane of the same universe. So they just have completely different, it's a multiverse without having to go outside of the universe effectively. So you could say that that's the nature of their power, and it all sits in those pockets. But then again, that also doesn't, require you to say that all these stories are in different universes. I mean, granted, it would take an interesting quantum physics, astrophysics level description to make it very clear to everyone, but I would like it, but I just know that I'm one of the rare world building nerds. But still, so there's just like, again, as I said, I'll say it again and again, there's a lot of cascading and wormhole and butterfly effect level implications that this has, and I don't care for it much at all. I just really don't. It's honestly kind of disappointing to me because the idea of an entire universe being a playground is so much more interesting than just like a dwarf galaxy, because it just leaves me with so many questions about what's out there. So it's like the God beyond, is that more like a Christian God or something? Is the God beyond an actual thing? Like, is the God beyond above ad nauseum, in which case it makes everything else just feel like small potatoes? Like, it breaks the scale and scope of it for me, and it kind of disappoints me in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's my rant and ramble about this idea that I think is a really, really old idea that Brandon has mentioned that I only found out about this year. So yeah, that's me ranting and raving about it. So let me know in the comments down below, how do you feel about this idea? Is it interesting? Is it disappointing? Am I overthinking it? Am I just being in my own head about it? Let me know about that in the comments down below. So as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.